Hello and welcome to A River Between Chaos and Zen, the poetry podcast from Creative Actors Lab. My name is Max, and on behalf of my wife Kelly, she says hello. And on this particular episode, I wanted to continue with the idea of where does poetry come from. And I have a piece that I wrote years ago when I was working for a large it was basically a high volume photo lab, and we did huge amounts of work, and it was a very, very busy place. And at the time that I was working there, at least during the time in which this poem was written, there would have been probably about 60 to 80 people working back in the production facility, and the front office in the back where we worked, it was very sequestered. There were codes you needed to get from the back production facility into the front office, and none of us had that. None of us that worked back there, because basically they didn't want us in the front office, because there was a real hierarchy and a very snootiness is probably the best way that I could put it. But there was one day that the Red Cross came in to do a blood drive. And it was lunchtime, and for whatever reason, but it was just myself, and there were three women were the only ones who were back in the production facility. We were sitting in this lunchroom eating our lunch, and the shipping department was right next to the lunchroom. So for whatever reason, everybody else was out doing something else. There was some kind of event, or they were having sandwiches and cookies in the parking lot, or whatever it was. But there was just three of us. So I'm back there, and we're eating lunch, and all of a sudden, we hear whomp. And the three of us look at each other and went, what in the blue blazes was that? And I went out to look around, didn't see anything, came back, started eating my lunch, and I said to everybody else, like, no, it's I don't know what that was, but everything's okay. And I sat down. About 30 seconds later, I'm going, something is not right. It's a very Miss Clavel from Madeline sort of like, something is not right. And I went back out to look, and what happened was the lady who was in charge of the shipping department basically had skipped breakfast and lunch, only had coffee, and gave blood. And guess what? She passed out. And I'm very grateful that she passed out back in the shipping department, where she did, rather than get behind the wheel of a car, because she was on the way out the door. And when she passed out, she hit the corner of her head on the edge of a metal filing cabinet and cut the crap out of the side of her head. So when I found her, she was like on the floor, up against the door and between the filing cabinet, and you couldn't really see her, and there was blood all over the fucking place. And it was dramatic, to say the least. And I was like, holy shit. So the other people that I was with, they came out, and one of the ladies, I was like, call 911, and she's like, how do I do that? And I went, okay, well, I'll take care of it. So basically, I called 911. We got the ambulance to come out. We got this lady we were like holding paper towels against the side of her head and all of this, and she came around, and the paramedics came in, got her and everything. They took care of everything. She was fine. Everything was fine, but it was dramatic, to say the least. Okay. Profanity warning coming up here. A couple hours later, all of a sudden over the PA, I hear, Max, please come to the production office. And I go, okay. And I go in, there's my boss sitting there, and I go, what's up? And he's like, I was just speaking with our legal counsel about what happened, and she said, if this event ever occurs again, here's what you should do. And basically, I was told what I did was wrong. I should not have called the ambulance. I should have gone to the front office, gotten management so they could figure out if we need to call 911 or not. And I'm going, okay, but I have a person who's unconscious and there's a dramatic amount of blood coming up the side of their head. They're unconscious and I don't have the codes to get into the front door. So, well, I understand that, but you can't do, and I was like, but you were not in a managerial position in which to make that decision. And so the next time, so if this ever, God forbid, happens again, I'm supposed to let the person lay there and bleed and go find somebody from management so they can come trotting on back, so they can put their sub sandwich down and come in and ascertain whether or not we have an emergency here. And I'm looking, going, okay, I have somebody who's unconscious. There's 3 of us there. Everybody else is panicking. I got the paramedics in here and I'm supposed to let this person pretty much lay there and bleed. Well, yes, that's a, and I at this point I was like, okay, I really need this job, and I really cannot tell them what I think of this, but I'm sitting there going, y'all are the stupidest bunch of motherfuckers I have ever met in my goddamn life. Are you fucking serious? And so when I got home that night, I was a tad bit chagrined, shall we say, and I wrote this. I'd like to share with you. It starts like this. It goes, Dear Legal Department, thank you for correcting me with your unabashed wisdom, ever-present vigilance, and attention to detail for outlining the priorities and methodology. If in the event I ever again find one of my coworkers lying unconscious, wedged between 2 filing cabinets, legs askew, half slouched, half supine on the floor, and bleeding from the head, if, God forbid, there is a future occurrence of such dimension and proportion, I know now the protocol is not first to call the ambulance or attempt to revive, but instead to first call upon a member of the management team to ascertain with a certainty greater than mine when and if I find one of my coworkers unconscious and bleeding is a good thing or a bad thing. For it seems that I am a bear of very little brain, and big words confuzzle me. Therefore, it is to be surmised by the brain trust in the upper echelon of management and legalities that it is extremely unwise to assist an unconscious coworker, especially one who is bleeding profusely from the fucking head. Certainly I, a mere minion amongst the cogs of this grand enterprise, will heretofore consider myself counseled, enlightened, and forewarned, of which, by the way, I got written up for this. It went on my permit. I got fucking written up in a disciplinary. I never had been written up in my life. And I got a disciplinary write-up for this. So, but I digress. Certainly I, a mere minion amongst the cogs of this grand enterprise, will heretofore consider myself counseled, enlightened, and forewarned not to tread lightly, if at all, within the parameters pertaining to the vicious whirlpooling sewer inhabited and frequented by doctors, lawyers, and insurance companies, and upper management whose elitist realm we hourly wage hobos can only wish to penetrate with our greasy fingers and unwashed mentalities, ipso facto rendering us woefully unable to calculate the complexities of systematic response that should be enacted when we find one of our fellow workaday apes unconscious on the floor, sporting a pale complexion, shallow of breath, wedged between 2 filing cabinets, half slouched, half supine, from a gash upon their forehead requiring 7 eventual stitches, acquired during sudden tumultuous descent from consciousness into oblivion. And did I mention the blood being emitted profusely from the fucking head? Thank you, dear legal department, for your clarification. If I, by chance, in the regrettable future, find another fellow employee in peril, I will, 1, go find a member of the management team. 2, inform them that a fellow hourly wage ape is in a state of aforementioned peril. i.e. unconscious on the floor, legs askew, wedged between two filing cabinets and bleeding like holy shit, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, from the fucking head, come quick, come quick, come quick. And then 3, hand a member of the management team my cell phone because I'm sure I will have forgotten how to dial 911. And then 4, let those of higher position in the managerial strata decide when unconsciousness and blood loss is a reportable circumstance or when it is a distraction from industrial productivity. The sequence of protocol is now clearly embroidered upon the neural canals and thought wave frequencies. However, being that I am a bear of very little brain and big words and ominous circumstances confuzzle me, please be aware that if in the unforeseen future I should ever again encounter another fellow ape, co-worker or otherwise, within the walls of this fine corporation or without, who is apparently stricken with an inappropriate lack of consciousness and even a small but suspicious smattering amount of head bleeding, I could, I don't know, just possibly, like, maybe get a little, kind of sort of brain farty and forgetful about the approved corporate procedures concerning calling 911 for unconscious individuals bleeding from the fucking head during work hours. If I so heinously fuck up by calling the ambulance first and management second, please forgive my transgression because I am, as aforementioned, a bear of very little brain. But, dear legal department, why do I tend to think that once the day is over and the corporate charade has sloughed off, the masks of legality obscuring humanity discarded, the vicious whirlpools risen above, that I were ever, God forbid, that if it were ever, God forbid, you, dear legal department, that I were to find legs askew, wedged between two filing cabinets, half slouched, half supine, weeping crimson from a 7-stitch worthy gash upon your brow, eyes obscured by pallorous lids acquired from a plunge into an unexpected loss of consciousness, that you, in the following days, would be grateful for my choice of temporary amnesia, humanitarian propriety overshadowing corporate protocol. I will similarly hold no grudge or think any less of you or behold you as any less of the astute, dear legal department that you are. If I were to get a little, I don't know, kind of sort of brain farty and confuzzled, should you ever find me in need of your compassion rather than your protocols, because we are, after all, bears of very little brain, equally and alternately capable of saving each other's lives and bleeding profusely from the fucking head. I kid you not, that really happened. And I figured it's better to write something like this than to tell my boss what an absolute bunch of assholes I thought I worked for. But I'd be curious to hear if any of y'all have ever experienced such corporate insanity. On that note, thank you for listening. May the long-time sun shine upon you, all love surround you, and the pure light within you guide your way on. Until next time.